Everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here or just stopping by, hello, my name is Jennifer. I'd love it if you stuck around and subscribed. We do a little bit of everything here on this channel, and before I took my very not planned year-long hiatus, I had started to do more true crime videos. I do really like true crime and shit of that nature. It's very interesting to me just to figure out what made somebody do that and then try to continue on in their lives like nothing ever happened. It's the strangest shit to me, and I love researching it and trying to figure out what the hell happened. But I do have one other video so far planned out and like ready to go. So if this is something you're interested in, I am going to start a playlist specifically for my true crime videos, because I do a lot of other things here on my channel. We do makeup, we do hair stuff, because this is not my hair, I have extensions. We do mom videos, home videos, makeup videos. We do a little bit of everything. So I have been rambling. But if you are interested in true crime, you can subscribe. I will start a playlist specifically for true crime videos, and let me know down below in the comment section how you feel about this. So today's video is over Diane Downs, who is pretty infamous. Sadly, she got quite a bit of attention for her crimes, which are absolutely just, I don't know how a person lives with themselves. Diane Downs was born Elizabeth Diane Fredrickson, and she was born August 7th, 1955 in Phoenix, Arizona. Her parents, Wes and Willadine, which is a super cool name, and I feel like they should have kept on the W's, Wes and Willadine. But anywho, they said that Diane had a pretty typical childhood, although as she grew into like a teenager, she really liked attention from men and boys alike. So she was pretty flirty in high school and everything, but for the most part they reported that she had a typical childhood, no big trauma or anything to speak of. When Diane was in high school, she actually met her future husband, Steve Downs. They both attended Moon Valley High School in Phoenix, and they did end up getting married in 1973. So she was 18 years old when they got married, which seems absurd to some of us, but I mean, after they were married, Steve and Diane did make a big move to Oregon, and in Oregon, Diane actually worked as a postal worker, which was weird. They ended up having 3 children. Christy Ann was the oldest, Cheryl Lynn was the middle child, and then they had one little boy who was the youngest, and his name was Stephen Daniel. The couple divorced in 1980, mainly because of irreparable damage that Diane had caused from multiple affairs, not being a very attentive wife or mother. Pretty much everyone that knew Diane and her children said that everything came before her children. Men came before her children. What she wanted to do came before them. Her job came before them. Just everyone. So they did end up divorced in 1980, and for some reason Diane kept full custody of all 3 of the children. Reports also stated that Diane was especially distant with the middle child, Cheryl, for no discernible reason. Nobody knows why exactly, but she was reportedly way more distant and way more shitty to Cheryl. There's really not a different way to explain it. Like I said, everyone said pretty much that Diane put everything above her kids. They were just kind of an afterthought. So Diane soon started an affair with a businessman whose name I couldn't remember. I couldn't find his first name. It is out there, but I couldn't find it. Knickerbocker, and everyone just called him Nick. The couple broke up when he made it clear down the road that he had no interest in children being in his life, whether they were his or his partner's children. There was nothing specifically wrong with Diane's children. He just, in general, did not want children in his life. And having an affair with a woman that has 3 children is obviously not kosher. It's not going to work. So they did break up. After they broke up, Diane Downs did not give up at all on Nick. She actually wrote in her journal on how much she loved him, how much she was obsessed with him, stating that she would do anything to be with him. In her journal, she constantly wrote how much she loved Nick and how much she would do anything to be with Nick and how much she did not want to be a mother. She did not want her children if that meant she could not have Nick, which all kind of goes back to she put everything and everyone above her children, including herself and her romantic relationships. So in this journal, basically, she ran through everything in her life, all of her feelings over her ex-husband, affairs that she has had, and everything about how much she does not like her children. She can't stand them. They're ruining her life. They're holding her back. She can't be with the man she loves because she has children from a man that she no longer loves. So it just was, nothing was really adding up good for Diana in her life. Not to say that what she did was in any way excusable, because it absolutely was not. So now we need to move on to what actually happened now that you have a little bit of background on Diane. On May 19th in 1983, Diane arrived at the Mackenzie Williamette Hospital in Springfield, Oregon. She stated that her and her 3 children had been shot by a random man out on a back road. Diane had herself been shot in the arm. She had wrapped a towel around her own arm, and, she had came into the ER, and immediately, all the personnel went out to the car because she stated that her 3 children had also been injured in this shooting. When medical staff got out to the car, all 3 children were in the car and present. Of the 3 children, Cheryl, which was the middle child, was dead on arrival. She had died from her injuries. And Danny and Christy were both in critical condition. Suspicions began when police and staff noted how calm Diane was. From the time she walked into the hospital to everything going on with her children. I mean, one of her children had already been pronounced dead and she still remained calm. She was joking with medical staff. She had wrapped her own injury with a towel but had done nothing to aid her 3 children. She just remained eerily calm. And even if you don't have children, you could imagine anybody in your life that you care about being attacked and shot. You would not be calm. Any sane person, if you witness something like that, something that violent, you would not be calm. You would be panicking. And especially if those were your children, I couldn't even imagine. I would be feral. I would not know what to do with myself. While Diane's oldest and her youngest children, Christy and Danny, were fighting for their lives, Diane sat down with police and started to go through her story. Diane stated that they were traveling down a deserted back road at about 10 o'clock at night with all 3 of her children, and there was an African-American man just in the middle of the road on this deserted back road. She stated that the kids were asleep in the back and decided to make sure that the man was okay. So Diane said she pulled over and the man had a gun and was threatening her and told her to get out of the car, that he was going to take it. After arguing with the man on the side of the road, she said she threw the keys out to the side of the road, and when the man went for the keys, she jumped in the car and started the ignition. Before she could pull off, she stated that the man ran up to the car and shot 4 shots into the vehicle, hitting all 3 children and Diane. Diane then said she sped off like a mad woman and raced to the hospital as quickly as she could, leaving the man deserted still on this back road. So, first and foremost, before we get into the actual investigation of this case, let's just, on our own, as not law enforcement, point out a few holes. What single woman, granted this was in the 80s and things were not nearly as, popular, like stranger danger and safety, but what single woman in their right mind would pull over for a hitchhiker with 3 kids in the back seat? I'm not going to say anything. Like, a lot of people have pointed out, why was she on a back road with all 3 children that late at night? I have been known, not so much now that my child is older, she is 4, but when she was a little bit younger and we were having issues with her going to sleep, I'm not going to lie, we would go out and just drive around because the car seat soothed my child. But her children were older, and I'm not going to poke holes in that. I will, however, poke a hole in why would a single woman with 3 children pull over on a deserted back road for a random man. That has been hammered into my head my entire life, and especially since I have an interest in true crime, as well as my mom. I have always been taught you do not pull over for somebody, even if it's a police officer and you don't feel safe. You do not pull over until you are in a well-lit, populated area. So that's one issue. The next issue is how she was remaining so calm while she was talking to police. She was joking around with the hospital staff and police while she was telling the story of how her and her 3 children had been brutally attacked. One child was already dead and the other 2 were in critical condition. Who does that? We'll move on. So when the police went out to this back deserted road that Diane claimed she was on, they did find casings from a .22 gun, but they found no other evidence. They came up empty. Other than shell casings, they found no evidence of another person being there, and it was just a stretch of empty back road. There was nothing there to be found. At the hospital, while Christy and Danny were fighting for their lives, Diane continued to calmly retell her story to police and hospital staff, and eventually the media, because obviously the media is going to show up if 4 people have been attacked, one's already been pronounced dead, because you just don't hear of that very often, especially in the 80s. That's just not a common thing to happen. Amid the investigation, Diane Downs' ex-husband and Nick, so Steve Downs, her ex-husband, and the children of her father, and Nick, her ex-lover that she was having an affair with, both told police that Diane did in fact own a .22 caliber gun and mistreated the children and generally treated them like an afterthought. Knickerbocker also informed the police that Diane Downs had threatened his wife because he was married, and stated that she would get rid of her children if it meant that they could get back together. Police couldn't understand the events that Diane was recalling and actually had her reenact that night, and there's video of it out on the internet if you would like to. You can research on your own, you can Google and you can find it. It is public knowledge that this video exists. During this video, which as a mother I could see myself agreeing to reenact something if the police needed that to understand what had happened more, but that would be very traumatic to reenact what should be the most painful night of your life. Your 3 children have been shot. One of them is dead. You have been shot. That should be a very somber day in your life. However, when police and Diane were in a parking lot with a car and video cameras and they were recording this, and Diane was acting out what had happened, she can be seen on the video primping, fixing her hair, checking how she looks. She's laughing, she's goofing off with police officers, and the police officers are even like confused by her behavior. They're taken aback by it, because who acts like that when you're reenacting a brutal thing that happened in your life and to your children? After this video is taken, Diane is continuously doing interviews with the media, proclaiming her innocence, because the nation is pretty much split in two. Did she do this or did she not do this? Police are very suspicious of her, and there's a good amount of people that are suspicious of her and think that she has shot her children and tried to kill them and succeeded in killing one. So Diane is doing all these interviews with the media, stating that she would never do this. If she had tried to kill her children, wouldn't she have done a better job and made sure they were dead? Would she have driven so quickly to the hospital for medical attention for her children? And she will not shut up. She is talking to anybody that wants an interview. She's talking to all these police officers, and she's just not really paying attention to the 2 children that are alive in critical condition. She's too busy doing all these interviews. So after Christy, who is the oldest daughter, recovered enough from her injuries, which her injuries caused her to have a stroke, and it took her a really long time to recover. She had to relearn how to walk, how to talk, and how to communicate with people. But when she had finally recovered enough that she could have visitors, the police brought Diane Downs into the room to visit with her oldest daughter. Now, you would expect this to be a tearful reunion, very joyous moment that, you know, your child is alive. It was not. Diane walked in the room, and obviously Crystal was attached to a bunch of medical equipment, one of those being a heart monitor. And as soon as Christy saw Diane, her blood pressure shot up, her pulse shot up, she visibly panicked, and that would lead anybody to believe that she was afraid of her mother. Had this been a typical parent and child relationship, you could imagine that the daughter would have been super excited to see her mom after she's been in the hospital. She's scared, she's hurt, but she's not. She is utterly just in a panic from the sight of Diane. That should have been a huge red flag, and it was for the police. Police eventually do end up getting a warrant for Diane's house, and though they did not find a .22 gun, they found shell casings, and these shell casings were for a .22 firearm, and they matched the shell casings from the scene and the shell casings that had obviously been used to shoot herself and her 3 children. So they also gathered reports from witnesses that were actually out on the road the same night that the shooting had happened, and they stated that Diane Downs was driving ridiculously slow. People were stating that they were passing her and honking at her, and that she was allegedly going about 5 miles per hour. This is on the way to the hospital after she and her children had been shot. That's a pretty big problem, especially since Diane was adamant that she did not do this. She drove like a mad woman. She was swerving and speeding and doing everything she could to get to the hospital as quickly as she could. And now there are people coming out saying she was going so slow that they didn't even think she was going 5 miles an hour. Diane Downs was eventually, finally arrested on February 28th in 1994. So this has been a very, very long time coming. Diane did maintain her innocence throughout her trial, even though there was so much evidence against her, and her surviving daughter, Christy, the oldest, did recover enough from her injuries that she actually testified against Diane. She got up on the stand and stated, "My mom shot my brother, my sister, and myself, and then shot herself." I could not imagine. So that should have been the final nail in the coffin. During the trial, actually, Diane showed up pregnant. Yeah. She stated that she got pregnant. There is actual interview footage of Diane stating, "Children are easy to conceive. I miss my children, so I decided to have another one. I miss being a mom." As if her 2 children were not already alive still. So during her trial, not only has her child pointed the finger at her and testified under oath, and Christy was old enough to understand what lies were and everything, under oath, pointed at her mom and said, "Yeah, my mom did this. My mom killed my sister and tried to kill my brother and I." Diane is at this exact moment in the trial pregnant. Diane did actually deliver a daughter named Becky. While she was in custody, the child was obviously immediately taken from Diane, and she was adopted by a loving family. As Becky got older, she actually discovered the truth of who her birth mother was, and she had a lot of issues, and it took her a very long time to accept that Diane was her birth mother and move past that and work through it, and I can't blame her. I think anyone would have an issue with that. So on June 17th, 1984, Diane Downs was found guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to life in prison with the eligibility for parole plus 50 years. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love it when people are sentenced to life. It's even better when it's life without parole plus more years. They are going to make sure that they never get out of prison. I love it when our legal system does that. Obviously, Diane is not happy with the outcome of her trial. She has been found guilty. She has been sentenced to prison for the rest of her natural born life, even though she was eligible for parole. Diane's 2 surviving children, her oldest daughter Christy and her only son Danny, did make a full recovery from their injuries. Not to state that they live fully normal lives. They do have lifelong effects from this horrific thing their supposed mother did to them. But they were actually adopted by Fred Hughey, who was the prosecutor in Diane's trial. So they went to a happy, loving home. Fred and his wife did raise her 2 surviving children, and they did, after a lot of therapy, they have moved on and they live very happy, full lives. And I wish I could say this was the end of Diane's story, but it is not. In 1987, Diane Downs escaped prison. She escaped. She got out. Obviously, this was a huge problem, and after 10 days of this woman missing from a federal prison, she was found. She was captured in Salem, Oregon, and returned. They added 5 additional years to her already massive sentence, and she was transferred to New Jersey. And then in 1994, she was transferred out to California. Diane Downs is still alive to this day in California, and she still claims her innocence. After all of that, she still claims her innocence. She still does interviews with the media when they are offered, and she still states that she did not do this. So not only was there a massive, huge outpouring from the nation over this case. How could a mother do this? How could anybody do this but a mother? You are literally, you made that human being. How could a mother do this to her children? The fact that even after all this overwhelming evidence is stacked against her, and she still to this day claims that she did not do this, after her own daughter testified that she did this. Diane Downs still states that she is innocent. Obviously, she has been assessed by several psychiatrists, and they have diagnosed her as having some serious behavioral issues, and she is a narcissist, and she will likely never admit to what she has done. But in my opinion, there is no other explanation. There's nobody else to point the finger at. The gun that Diane used was never found, and what do you even say? And in the last few years since COVID has hit, Diane has done interviews stating that she's worried about Christy and Danny, because when she looks at the map, she knows where they are in the general area, and she is worried about their safety, and she hopes they're okay. Obviously, I think that is all for media attention. There is no way she actually cares about those 2 individuals. I just can't. I can't. Diane Downs is quite possibly one of the worst mothers to go down in history. I think she deserves every single solitary day she has left on this earth. I think she deserves to serve them in prison. She has been up for parole a few times, and very, very obviously she has been denied parole. I think it's very unlikely that Diane Downs will ever be a free woman again, and I think that's a good thing. What do we take away from this case? Diane Downs is a trash human being. I don't think there's any other way to describe this woman. Steve Downs is honestly, I couldn't quite figure out why Steve Downs didn't get custody of the 2 surviving children, but I digress. So that is the story of Diane Downs and her unbearably selfish ways. There were other ways to go about this. If you didn't want your children anymore, if you were too busy chasing a man. Obviously, Diane Downs is just trash as a human being. I can't imagine how anybody, let alone the mother of the children, could do this. I can't. Oh, I don't think I mentioned it. She was shot in the arm in a spot where it could be proven that she shot herself. And apparently she had shot herself to try to divert attention from herself to make it more believable, but obviously it didn't work. I don't understand how somebody could do that to another person, let alone your own children. Furthermore, I will never ever understand how she did that, but at the same time, if she was over being a mom, she didn't want her children, she wanted to go chase some random guy, that's her prerogative. There were other things she could have done. She could have reached out to somebody. They had a father. They have a father still. Her choice should not have been to murder her children, because that is just, how do you do that? How do you live with yourself? And Diane is still very full of herself. Yeah, so that is the story of Diane Downs and her trash existence and what she did to her 3 children. I don't even know what else to say. If you like this video or you're interested in more videos like this, give this video a thumbs up, and you can leave me a comment down below with your thoughts on this case and other cases you would like to see in the future. I do have one other video planned out true crime wise, and I'm working my way through some more that I'd like to cover. But yeah, Diane Downs, trash human being. I hope you liked the video just as much as anyone could like a video about a mother murdering her children, but I digress. I'm gonna get off of here and stop rambling. So yeah, I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.